In the heartland of Nebraska, farmer Henry Mitchell stumbled upon an unexpected sighting on his land, a deep hole that seemed to lead into the unknown depths below. Fueled by curiosity, he decided to go down into the darkness, but what he encountered left him in disbelief. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Beneath his own farm, Henry found himself face to face with a tribe that should not exist in the modern world. Henry was about to get very angry with the boy. Not only had he called him out here for most likely a stupid joke, but now he was also jumping in front of his car. This boy was almost begging to be fired, but then Henry got a view of what was behind the boy. Or maybe better, what was not behind the boy. Where there was supposed to be a road, there was now a clear absence of sandy tire tracks. There was actually a hole in the ground. The field worker had been telling the truth. But what Henry did not know yet was that he was only seeing a very small part of the hole. Only when he got out of his car and walked closer to the hole did he see the full scope of the discovery. His jaw nearly dropped to the floor. He had never seen anything like this before, and he could not imagine how this had gotten here. It could be a giant sinkhole, a meteor crash, or the result of a small earthquake. But none of these options really made sense. Back at the farmhouse, the duo hastily laid out a large canvas sheet on the living room floor. With a pen and pad, Henry began listing items they'd need. Ropes, lights, safety gear, he muttered, scribbling each item down. Joshua nodded, adding some food, water, maybe a first aid kit. Joshua noticed Henry's uncertainty, sensing a hint of apprehension. "Hey, I get it," he began, placing a reassuring hand on Henry's shoulder. "It's not every day you find a mysterious hole on your property." Henry looked up, a mix of excitement and fear in his eyes. "It's not that," he replied. "I trust you, Josh. It's just, I've never done anything like this." Joshua smiled. "Don't worry. With the right gear and my knowledge, we'll be fine." The comforting glow of daylight was now entirely behind them. The oppressive darkness of the cavern surrounded them, broken only by the limited radius of their lantern's light. Shadows played tricks on their eyes, morphing into fleeting shapes before disappearing again. Every footstep, every drop of water dripping from the cavern's ceiling, seemed magnified in the stifling blackness. Their reliance on the lanterns became absolute. The vastness of the cavern distorted every sound. Their footsteps echoed, bouncing off unseen walls and reverberating back as if many others were with them. Amidst the echoes, Henry thought he heard the faint hum of a lullaby. Or was it just the wind's passage through the cave's labyrinthine channels? As they continued, the ground beneath them started leveling out, signaling the cavern's floor was near. They could make out vague, shadowy shapes ahead. Venturing further, they came upon a clearing of sorts, dominated by a circle of life-size statues. Each statue, meticulously carved, depicted a figure, some standing, some sitting, all in various poses that suggested a scene from daily life. Their faces were stoic, eyes empty yet seemingly watching. Henry and Joshua exchanged a glance. Who were these people? The two began constructing theories. Maybe this was a refuge during a great war, Henry suggested, or a sanctuary for a particular group. Joshua, meanwhile, pointed to the symbols etched on the walls. These could be clues, he said. Perhaps this was a place of worship or a sacred burial ground. As they sat, surrounded by the silent witnesses of the past, an old legend whispered its way back into Henry's memory. Grandpa used to speak of a tribe that vanished without a trace, their existence becoming a myth over time. Gazing around the cavern, Henry wondered aloud, could this be their final resting place? The stillness of the cavern was suddenly broken by a low, distant rumble. The ground beneath their feet vibrated, sending a jolt of alarm through both men. "Earthquake?" Henry questioned, his voice carrying a hint of panic. Joshua, steadying himself against a statue, replied, "I'm not sure, but we shouldn't stay to find out." Without another word, they gathered their gear, fastening their harnesses in haste. The echoing tremor seemed to chase them as they began their hurried ascent. The mysterious world below faded into darkness, but their sense of urgency was illuminated clearer than ever. Word spread like wildfire, and by evening, a sea of cars lined the field. Families, adventurers, and the simply curious congregated, all hoping for a glimpse of the enigmatic pit. As night deepened, the distant wail of sirens grew progressively louder. The crowd hushed in anticipation, all eyes drawn to the approaching line of police cars. Officers stepped out, their radios crackling, and their expressions stern. "Everyone, please remain calm," their leader announced, surveying the scene with a practiced eye. Amidst the chaos, Joshua's pulse raced. Thoughts of potential consequences and interrogations weighed heavily on him. "Henry," he whispered urgently, "maybe we should leave, lay low for a while." Henry, caught off guard, took a moment to process the gravity of the situation. "We can't run. It'll only make things worse," he responded, but his gaze betrayed a similar anxiety. The police methodically began establishing a perimeter around the hole, cordoning it off with bright yellow tape. "For your safety, please step back," they instructed the crowd. By morning, a new set of vehicles adorned the farm vans with logos representing various geological and archaeological institutions. Experts, donned in protective gear, conferred with one another, clipboards in hand. Their leader, Dr. Lyanna Keaton, wore an expression of constant curiosity, often sharing hushed conversations with her team. "We're onto something monumental," she'd whisper, excitement evident in her voice. Preliminary assessments carried whispers of a fascinating possibility. Rumors spread among the media the underground world might be connected to a tribe that had vanished without a trace centuries prior. Under a bright spotlight, Henry stood, microphone in hand, facing a local news anchor. "It's all quite surreal," he admitted, sharing his initial disbelief and subsequent adventures. As tales of his bravery and curiosity aired, Henry's status in the community soared. Invitations to local events, schools, and talk shows poured in. The modest farmer had become an unexpected sensation. In the shadows, Joshua's worries mounted. He watched Henry bask in acclaim, but with every camera flash, his own anxieties deepened. "If my boss sees this, I could lose my job," he confided in a friend. From corner diners to grand conference rooms, the story became a topic of discussion. The mystery of the underground cavern permeated the national consciousness. Tourists, researchers, and the simply curious descended on the farm. Amid the throngs of visitors, a stooped, elderly man stood out. His face, a map of wrinkles and sunspots, looked familiar to some of the older residents. Not one for crowds, the old man approached the farmhouse directly. After a brief exchange with a bewildered Henry at the door, the request was made a quiet, uninterrupted conversation was needed. The two men sat, the air thick with anticipation. The old man began, his voice a low rasp, sharing tales of youthful adventures, hidden secrets, and a deep bond with Henry's grandfather. He spoke of buried truths, of cover-ups, and of a pact that was made all those decades ago. As the tale unfolded, the room's atmosphere changed from tense to surreal. The statues, the old man revealed, were art pieces, meticulous models crafted for a museum exhibition that never saw the light of day. Due to unforeseen controversies, they were buried, with Henry's grandfather being an unknowing accomplice. The town's most profound mystery was, in truth, an art project lost to time. At first, the revelation felt like the floor had shifted beneath Henry, but as the weight of the truth settled in, he began to chuckle, soon growing into hearty laughter. The idea that their epic adventure had unveiled a buried art project seemed absurdly comic. Of all the secrets, he mused, wiping tears from his eyes, this is one for the history books. Well, one thing had become clear. The adventures and misadventures had brought Henry and Joshua closer. Their once casual friendship now had the depth of shared experiences, filled with highs, lows, laughter, and discovery. They often sat together at the Sinkhole Cafe, reminiscing and planning their next big adventure, whatever that might be. Like all great stories, the saga of the Sinkhole and its faux tribe began to embed itself in the town's oral tradition. Elders, with a twinkle in their eye, would regale children with tales of the great discovery, adding their own flourishes and humorous anecdotes. As years passed, the story took on a life of its own, becoming an integral part of the community's collective memory. As months turned to years, life in the town settled back into its familiar rhythm. But something had changed. There was a newfound sense of pride, a shared chuckle, and a deeper connection to the land beneath their feet. The Great Sinkhole, with all its initial shock and later revelations, had taught the town one invaluable lesson: to embrace, cherish, and find joy in the unexpected.